I like how Eckhart Tolle says that we're all sunbeams or rays of the sun. You know, the sun is God, and we're all just little light beams, little sunbeams of God. But He is in all of us, and we are a part of Him. We are one with Him. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at it. We're not these separate beings, and these tiny little egos and these tiny little people fighting for our way, and we're just in these bodies, and this is all we are. We're so much more than these bodies. We are so much more than we've been told. We don't have to fix ourselves to manifest. We don't have to do a ton of meditations and visualization and affirmations. Those things are nice and they can help raise your mood and your vibration, but they're not 100% necessary. They're more like permission slips. Sometimes we feel like we need to get to a certain place before we're worthy or able to attain a desire or manifest a desire. Even the self-concept is a bit misleading, and it's more of just trying to fix your ego. Our self-concept is really nothing more than what our egos think of ourselves. So working on creating a more confident ego self-concept isn't really changing anything besides your ego. And when we're working from our egos, we're not really coming from the spirit, from the present moment. If you enjoy our content, you might want to dive deeper and check out the two books that I've written. One is called Unleashing Destiny, which is a deep dive into manifestation and how our brain works to help us manifest. And there's also Believe the Best About Yourself and Your Life, a guide to living beyond childhood trauma. Until we realize that we're fractals of God, that we are awareness, that we are consciousness. We are the consciousness, we are the awareness that sits behind the ego and notices it. We notice that the ego is feeling angry or insufficient, and we're aware that we're aware of it. So the one that is aware is the fractal of God. We are all tiny gods. Even in the Bible it says that. Didn't I tell you you are all gods? Jesus says it, and it's in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. So we are all gods. We are all fractals of God. And that is what we need to come to terms with. And that's where we have been lied to. We're told that we're all separate, that we're these little egos, that we're these little stories that we have been told since we were children. We buy into them and we live up to them because the main thing the ego wants is to be right. That's all it wants. If it destroys us, but it proves that it was right, then it's fine with that because that's all it has. Once we realize who we actually are, the ego kind of dissipates and goes so far into the background that it loses all control. And that is not what it wants. Because that's what we've been living up to our whole lives. It's these little tiny stories, these little egos that have been manipulating us. And we didn't even know it because that's what we were told. That's what our parents were taught. That's what they taught us. And it's just not true. So once we realize that we are little gods, that we are fractals of God, and we're all creating our own realities, that's when things change. We are constantly manifesting. And then we'll start manifesting the things that we want. Because when we realize this, our behaviors change. The way we think about life changes. Things start falling into place for us because we're actually being who we were meant to be. a fractal of God, part of God, walking in his spirit or divine spirit. I don't know about, I always say him because we're so used to being told God's a man. I don't know whether God's a man or not. I doubt it because he doesn't really need to have a sexual orientation, does he? But anyhow, yeah, once we're walking in the divine and living as fractals of the divine, our manifestations come to us. Creation is done. They're being unveiled. It's being revealed. We're not creating anything. We're not creating anything. The things that were always meant for us are just being unveiled, being revealed, coming to us because we actually are walking and living the way we were meant to be in the first place. And that's what's called being in alignment. A lot of manifestation teachers and coaches are talking about being in alignment. Well, that's being in alignment when you realize who you actually are. Then you can start manifesting the things that you want in life instead of the things that you dread. Because when we're manifesting from these old stories, these old loops in our mind, telling these lies and these stories about who we are, and we just keep living up to them and living up to them because we think that's who we are. And then we try to better our ego. Well, I'm going to make my ego better. But it doesn't change anything. And it ends up making things worse half the time. And I just want to really make this clear so we don't have to keep trying to change old thoughts, old emotions, all those old lies, all those old stories, and trying to overcome them. Once we just step back and realize who we actually are, the ones behind all of it, just observing it, we're above it. We are so far above that. We don't need to waste our time trying to overcome those old stories and lies. Once you realize this truth, you will be free. All right. Thanks for listening.